Hi everyone. So we'll continue memorizing from the book of Hebrews. Yesterday we memorized Hebrews 5 verse 1. So today we are going to memorize Hebrews chapter 5 verse 2. It's a very short verse. So I'll read that first. Hebrews chapter 5 verse 2. He can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is beset with weakness. He can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is beset with weakness. So I'll read Hebrews chapter 5 verse 1 and 2 together. For every high priest chosen from among men is appointed to act on behalf of men in relation to God, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. He can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is beset with weakness. So yesterday we meditated on verse 1 and we said there are 4 characteristics of high priest, right? So we meditated on the 4 characteristics of the high priest. So the first characteristic is he is specially chosen from among men, right? So why is that important? In the second verse it says, since he is also a man, he can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is beset with weakness. So he himself has that weakness, right? The high priest, who is specially chosen from among men, he is also a man. So he can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is beset with weakness. That is one reason that Jesus has come down as man, right? So we already saw this in Hebrews chapter 2 verse 17. Therefore, he had to be made like his brethren in every respect, so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in the service of God, to make expiation for the sins of the people. For because he himself has been suffered and been tempted, he is able to help those who are tempted. Again, we saw that in Hebrews chapter 4 verse 14. For we have not a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sinning. So the same thing is given here, right? One of the characteristic of the high priest is he is chosen from men, right? So he should be a man so that he can identify with our weaknesses. He can identify with our temptations. So that's the reason Jesus has come down as man. He partook in our flesh and blood, and he chose to experience all our weaknesses. He chose to experience all the temptations. So he experienced pain, suffering and death on the cross. So as God, he will not be able to experience any of that, right? So since he has experienced all of this, he can identify or he can sympathize with our weaknesses. So that is very important for a high priest, right? So high priest should be able to sympathize with the ignorant and wayward, right? So that is the second verse here. Hebrews chapter 5 verse 2. He can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is beset with weakness. So Jesus has experienced all this, and so he is able to sympathize with this, right? So that is what we read in Hebrews chapter 4 verse 14. We have not a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sinning. The difference is he has not sinned. He has experienced all the weaknesses. He has experienced all the temptation, but he has not sinned. So he gave, as a high priest, he has given us a model to follow. So one of the role of high priest is he should be morally superior, right? He should have a high moral standing. That is another characteristic of the high priest. So that is a main point here. So he can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is beset with weakness. So I just wanted to add one more point which I was reading, which I saw when I was going through the Didache Bible explanation. So here it says he can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, right? So a person can sin out of ignorance or out of choice, right? So if he is doing out of ignorance, then that crime or that sin is not that serious, right? But if he is sinning, if he knows that that's a sin, and still if he is doing that, then that is more serious. And in ignorance also, if he is committing sin in ignorance, there are two types. Again, we can divide it into two. One is invincible ignorance and second is vincible ignorance. So in case of invincible ignorance, that person doesn't know that that particular action is sin, or he has no way of knowing that that particular action is a sin. So he will not be held responsible for that. So second one is vincible ignorance, that there is a possibility for that person to know the truth, but still he chose to remain ignorant, right? That is more serious than invincible ignorance. So in ignorance also we can divide it into two: invincible ignorance and vincible ignorance, and vincible ignorance is more serious compared to invincible ignorance. So I just wanted to add that. I like that explanation. I read it in Didact Bible. So that's all. It's a very short verse, nothing much to explain there. So with this, I'll conclude today's meditation. So we'll memorize Hebrews chapter 5, verse 2 today. I'll read that. He can deal gently with the, Hebrews chapter 5, verse 2. He can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is beset with weakness. Thank you. God bless you all.